English, then if we're not in Spanish.
Muy buenas tardes a todos, bienvenidos, gracias por estar aquí. Esta reunión comunitaria básicamente se está llevando a cabo porque hemos recibido múltiples llamadas, emails, han venido a platicar en persona con nosotros diferentes gentes con diferentes preocupaciones. Mi nombre es Terry Jurado, soy la vicepresidenta de la Santa Bárbara Eastside Society. Aquí conmigo está nuestro presidente, el señor Sebastián Aldana, y estamos muy contentos de que la gente, ustedes, estén esta tarde con nosotros, porque tenemos información magnífica, de primera mano, con gente que está realmente muy informada de cómo se puede obtener un permiso para tener un negocio que tiene que ver con comida en la ciudad de Santa Bárbara. De tal manera que les damos la más cordial bienvenida. Gracias.
Okay, so we're going to get it started, and once again, this all came about from concerns from actually vendors, residents, businesses, so it's just to get proper information. That's all it is. No bashing on anybody.
Y antes de continuar, quisiera presentar a algunos de los miembros de la mesa directiva de la Santa Bárbara Eastside Society. Con nosotros está Jesse, si quieres ponerte de pie. Jesse ha sido un hombre crucial en este trabajo, de tal manera de que él ha estado yendo a diferentes lugares para informarse y para ver de qué manera podemos ayudar, pasa por favor, a nuestra gente. También con nosotros está Tino de Guevara, él es también miembro de la mesa directiva. Tino de Guevara, miembro de la mesa directiva. Está también con nosotros Lucrecia Méndez. Lucrecia Méndez es una embajadora de nuestra asociación. Está también con nosotros Lorena Sandoval. Lorena nos ayuda de más en nuestra asociación, en nuestro grupo, y todos y cada uno que están aquí, gracias.
Y también a Jet.
Jet, oh my God! La secretaria Jet, so I'm ready to yes. Jet,
once again, Santa Barbara Eastside Society, please,
yeah. Y Adrián Sánchez, Jet, Lorena y Lucrecia, ¿ya vas? Él es el mero de todo nuestro social media, de fotografía, de todo. Gracias.
So this is the group that helped put it together. Okay, and right here we have Barbara Anderson from the City Administration Department. We have Danny Way from the City Attorney's Office. We have Neva Sola and Omar Alejandro Ramos from the Health Department, Environmental Health. And over here we have Carlos.
Carlos Enciso, I'm a board-certified interpreter translator. So today, everything will be in English and Spanish. But for those who want to understand everything in Spanish, we have Teresa back there, and we have wireless earphones. So you're going to put your wireless earphones, and I'm going to do simultaneous interpretation of everything they're saying in English into Spanish. I do this in court every day. So I don't miss, I don't enhance, you're going to hear everything they say, you will hear it softly in the earphones. Now, you picked up the earphones and then as you leave, you return them. But you will hear everything in Spanish. And now I'm going to do the announcement in Spanish. Para aquellos que quieran escuchar toda esta reunión en español, Teresa, mi asistente allá que también es intérprete, tiene unos audífonos que son inalámbricos. Ustedes los reciben, se los ponen, se sientan en cualquier lugar y van a escuchar todo simultáneamente en español. Todo lo que diga ella, él, el señor abogado, la señora, yo no cambio, no agrando, no achico, todo lo que digan lo van a entender. Y si quieren hacer preguntas en español, levantan la mano y nosotros les vamos a hacer la interpretación de sus preguntas de inglés al español. For those who want to ask your questions in Spanish, you can do so, and we will do with her and myself, we will make sure that your questions are properly interpreted for the people to understand them and to respond. Se le van a entender las preguntas y se lo van a responder. Gracias. Thank you.
Okay, and sometimes it's hard to manage 1,000, I'm just going to leave some people out. We have Jordy Scully from the office of Monique Limon here, and also the other guy, Oscar Gutierrez, and also Ethan Bertrand from representative of Great Heart. He's here also. So with that said, I think we'll get it started. Hopefully.
No, falta que lo diga yo.
Okay.
Que no se te olvide, mi chulo. Pero se te olvida que estoy para recordar. Bueno, tenemos con nosotros a Barbara Anderson. Ella es de la ciudad de Santa Bárbara, del Departamento de Administración. A Dana Solon y a Omar Alejandro Ramos. Ustedes vienen de Environmental Health Department. A Danny Wade, él viene representando al abogado de la ciudad, que es el Attorney's Office. A Carlos Cerecero, que es una maravilla, me imagino que todos lo conocemos de millones de años. No por otra cosa, sino porque es buenísimo para traducir en diferentes idiomas. 5 idiomas. También tenemos con nosotros a Jordi. Jordi, thank you so much por estar aquí, for being here, de parte de la oficina de Monique Limon, de la senadora estatal Monique Limon. Thank you so much for always supporting our causes. También tenemos a un representante de Oscar Gutiérrez. Él es miembro del City Council. Oscar Gutiérrez ha contribuido también con esta causa. Él ha estado al pendiente de qué está pasando con esto y le damos las gracias. So please say thank you to Oscar Gutiérrez. Ethan Bertrand. Sorry. So you are the representative of Great Heart. También tenemos a miembros de la Greater Santa Barbara Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Tenemos al presidente Miguel Ávila, tenemos al vicepresidente Israel Velázquez, tenemos a una miembro de la mesa directiva, Jackie Inda, y ¿dónde está? Me está faltando Rodríguez, Miguel Rodríguez. ¿Por qué están ellos aquí esta tarde? Están aquí porque realmente les importa lo que tiene que ver con los negocios pequeños. Estamos muy de acuerdo que venimos a este país todos a tener una oportunidad. La oportunidad va a ser para todos, claro, pero nuestra obligación, yo también estoy como miembro de la Cámara Hispana de Comercio, todos pensamos y estamos aquí presentes también porque sabemos que nuestro deber es proteger a los negocios pequeños. De tal manera que por eso están estos miembros aquí presentes. Y todos ellos lo que vienen a hacer es a dar información de cómo hacer las cosas correctamente para que todo funcione como ha funcionado hasta ahora. Muchas gracias y vamos a empezar. Barbara, would you like to start?
Yes.
Barbara Anderson va a empezar.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to be here. Much appreciated. I know it's evening time, especially with families, and many of you are working multiple jobs like we all are, we feel like every single day. So I just also want to share my gratitude and appreciation for the Santa Barbara Eastside Society. We've been able to collaborate just over the last year on making sure that we're addressing priorities and concerns of the business community as well as our residents on the east side. So we'll continue to work closely together. We meet regularly, always eyes and ears of the community, and making sure that the city administrator's office in particular, but the city in general, is responsive to those concerns. So that is why we're here. We have seen an uptick, I think all of us, in the number of what we define as sidewalk vendors in the city of Santa Barbara, and I'll get to why this is the case. But I do want to differentiate from the start. That sidewalk vending is different than mobile food truck operations, which is different than outdoor restaurant operations, right? So we'll get into some of those delineations a little bit later. But again, thank you. So Barbara Anderson from the City Administrator's Office. I'm Senior Assistant to the City Administrator, Rebecca Bjork, who oversees all operations throughout the city. My job has been actually to implement a cross-departmental task force for sidewalk vending. One, because we need to do a much better job in communicating outward to all of you what our guidelines are and what the process is to become a licensed and permitted sidewalk vendor in the city of Santa Barbara. So that's first and foremost our priority. We welcome this business in our community. We support entrepreneurs in doing this. And of course, our residents love it, our visitors love it, and so we want to be able to facilitate it in a way that's positive for all. So that is our primary objective here. Secondarily, we do want to talk about some enforcement operations that we've initiated because our job is to make sure that the safety and health of our community, again, is protected at all times. So a lot of what you'll hear today is how we've been working in collaboration with the public health department to make sure that everything, again, that happens here is lawful and that is healthy and safe for all. Okay, perfect. And as Teddy and Sebastian said, our city attorney's office is here just in case there's questions about the law, how it's applicable, local, state, and beyond, right? So always have backup just in case. And I already got a comment that I look tired. Thanks, Natalia. Well, thanks. It's been a long day for all of us. It's been a long week. There's a lot going on in the city. There's actually a community meeting happening right now on the west side about parking issues, right? So we are out here, active, hearing from all of you to learn how we can do better by you and make sure that we're responding to any questions and concerns that you have. So on April 9th, 2022, so just last year, the City of Santa Barbara vending ordinance took effect, right? So this created a clear path of rules and regulations allowing for sidewalk vendors, stationary and roaming in the city to operate safely in the community with maintaining public access and public health. This is a change for Santa Barbara. Most vending in the public right-of-way was not allowed, it's prohibited, right? So you're just seeing a shift because it's now lawful in a lot of areas in the city to be able to do this business. Part of that was state initiated because they wanted to create more opportunities for people to be entrepreneurs and make a living, right? And part of it is, again, for us, an opportunity to support visitors and residents in the area. And hey, this food is good, folks. I get it. So the first priority is business license. So anyone who operates in the city has to obtain a license prior to conducting that business activity in the city. So even if you have a license from another city, you have to be licensed here. That process is actually super accessible, and I would say for all the things the city does, it's very affordable. It's a $30 fee plus taxes. And so what I have here is information. So this is our sidewalk vending information guide, both in English and Spanish, that has the pathway for you to be licensed. And then if you're selling food, the county public health department is involved. All of that is detailed here, the application is available here, and then all of the guidelines that I'll speak to are also available here. So please pick up that packet. If we don't have enough, my business card is here, my email, my phone number is here. Reach out to me, reach out to our office. So Talia Dorado, and she's our assistant in the city administrator's office. She's able to, again, communicate both in English and Spanish, any queries, and get you the information that you need at any time. Okay? So that business license, number one. Seller's permit, again, California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. So if you're doing business, paying taxes on the sales of your product has to go through that office. What's great is that you can go there in person and get that permit in the same day. So you can get it immediately once you fill that information out. If you're deciding to sell food, from public health will come in and they'll speak to that process in just a minute. So we do have guidelines. So this is city at its best. It's really tiny print, all of the guidelines that must be followed to our local ordinance and our local laws. So again, all of those details are available here, but it is just making sure that our public right-of-way is clear, right? That we're not putting anyone in harm's way when we're conducting this business activity. And you know that the food product and handling is all following those necessary protocols. And so this is where I'll get into. I'm not going to read out the guidelines, but there's some areas where sidewalk vending is completely prohibited in the city. That's very clear here, very clear. There's also areas where if you're stationary versus roaming, there's areas there that need to be followed. We also want to protect, again, public right-of-way, entrances and access to public buildings, and things like that. All that I think are pretty standard and accepted in terms of what we're trying to facilitate here. So again, the guidelines are very clear. So I just wanted to kind of end my initial comments, and then of course we'll all be available for questions and answers about differentiating some of the selling activity that we've seen. So the vendors that are mobile, tropical fruit, which is like the best. We have a couple of people that are selling products that aren't food, right? So all of that for us is very manageable, and we just want to make sure you're going through the right processes. We are committed to doing all of this education and outreach. So this is our first of many meetings. We are also going to be engaging with people one-on-one multiple times to share the information that's available here and facilitate that pathway for lawful and permitted activity.
Barbara, can I interrupt you? I'm so
Yes,
sorry for a second. ¿Alguien necesita aparatos para traducción? Nada más queremos estar seguros que todos tengan acceso a la información. ¿Todos están bien? ¿Todos? ¿Seguro?
Si necesita, levanta la mano. Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
So we have then the vendors that are coming from out of the area that are smaller hot dog vending operations that still have an open flame and grease, right? So that is concerning for us. So we will be working with them to understand better how we can facilitate that in a way that's going to follow the law for our local fire codes, right? So that there's tens of them being deployed post-event when everyone's hungry, totally get it. That again, we're going to do a lot of outreach to like how can we work together to make this lawful in our city. But then there's more substantial operations that we completely in black and white do not fall into our sidewalk vending ordinance. Again, mobile food truck is outside of this. Those operations, again, can happen through our city. All of that is through the public health department. You're good for the most part. The big mass operations of full grill, open flame, up a store, awning, lights, I think you know the drill. That what we're seeing out, especially in the Eastside community, that now has gone to the Westside community. We love the food, again, but it's really dangerous. It's really dangerous for so many reasons. One, if that open flame catches and that propane tank something happens, it now starts a fire. That full response from our city has to happen. Public right-of-way. So they are taking up full public right-of-way in really dangerous corridors. Some of you know driving through is dangerous, let alone if you're standing on that sidewalk. I am so worried personally, but the city is, that someone's going to step out of line and get hit by a car. So I will tell you, again, the creativity, appreciate, but it is so dangerous. So we are full on enforcing that through our fire code. So that's a violation of our fire code. That is very different than these other operations. So Denny can answer questions later. The sidewalk vending ordinance and the guidelines, those are administrative citations. So we say like, hey, you're not following our guidelines, you do this instead. If you comply, you're good. If you don't comply, you get a written citation that's like, please comply, right? These bigger operations, that is a criminal violation. That, if there's subsequent violations, leads to a criminal arrest, right? And if you do not abide by those laws, then it turns into a warrant for your arrest if you do not show up for a hearing. So we're being very serious about those more, we call egregious violations of the law, right? So please, again, we're separating these out. We support this work in our community. We want to create those pathways. But these things that are really, really dangerous for our community, we have to address for a lot of reasons. The last thing I want to say, because we've been getting a lot of questions about the labor practices of these operations. It is very concerning as we've been engaging with these individuals, how they're brought here, their work of operations, that they don't have a restroom, right? They're not getting the minimum wage that's required by law, right? So the more interaction we have, their supervisors not on site, but we know that they're being observed by someone, right? This is all very concerning to us, and I will say has raised a level of awareness at the state level. So we want to make sure that fair labor practices are in place in our community, and people are working in conditions that are positive for them and positive for the families that they're trying to support, right? So that's where we are. Jenny, is there anything that I said that you want to clarify before we?
No, I think you did great.
Okay. Good. And so we'll do questions at the end. I'm going to turn it to public health. Is that good? All right. Thank you.
My name is Dana Soma. I'm with Santa Barbara County Environmental Health. I'm so appreciative everyone's here, and I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to be able to speak. We get so many questions every day coming into our office about these operations, what they need, what's legal, what isn't. So it's really nice to talk to a group about this. When you're selling food, the street vending for food or beverage, it's known in our California Retail Food Code as a compact mobile food operation. And that is defined in our code as anything coming from an individual, a push cart, a stand, display, a pedal-driven cart, wagon, showcase, rack, or other non-motorized conveyance. The biggest question we have is, are they required to have health permits? The answer is, for the most part, yes. If you sell food or beverage, you are required to have a health permit. There is one exception. For a compact mobile food operation, you are exempt only if you sell under 25 square feet of prepackaged, non-potentially hazardous food or uncut produce. By non-potential hazardous food, that means food that does not need to be kept hot or cold to be kept safe. Examples of that would be bags of chips, pretzels, muffins, anything prepackaged for sale, or whole watermelons, whole oranges, things like that. Our process is pretty simple. What we're really asking is if you have any questions to please come in and contact us. If you're selling food, we can help you through the process. We have a plan check process. It does require a fee. We go through the process. We help you with it until we can get an approval for it, and then you're issued a health permit. We have lots of documents today in both English and Spanish. We have facts and questions on how you could operate, how you get a health permit, all kinds of questions. We'll have them out for you today. And if you have any questions, we ask that you contact us, and we'll happily help you through the process. That's it for now. Do you guys have any? Oh, I want to introduce Omar. Omar Ramos has been working really closely with a lot of the vendors, a lot of the bigger vendors that currently do not have health permits on the street. And he speaks both English and Spanish and is very, very helpful. Exactly. And we do have contact information. You're welcome to contact us every time he does, like I said, speak Spanish. And we do have a sign-up sheet here. If you're interested in getting any additional information, you could put your email address or your phone number, what you're looking for, and we could make sure we do have some handouts today. But we could also send it to you via email or talk to you on the phone. And we'd be more than happy to help you with that.
So are we ready for the questions? Question and answer. Vamos a empezar con la sesión de preguntas y respuestas. We're going to start with any question you have, any concern, any comment. By the way, I have a couple of people that would like to participate, but they are working. So I'm going to place them in a phone call, so you're going to be able to hear. So you have a question.
Hi guys, I'm Jackie. I am currently one of the leads at La Casa de la Raza. I'm also the Santa Barbara Hispanic Children Foundation president. And I have actually a couple of questions, a pretty large range based on our membership and our people from business community. One is, I understand that there's a process here to get business licenses, but a lot of our businesses, especially the smallest of businesses, can't renew within 2 to 3 months. And so we're wondering what the city of Santa Barbara is doing to change the fact that this online system is just not working for our businesses. And if there's any way to fix it, like other cities have, so that we have the same response and respect that we used to have when we would go in to get our business licenses or renew our business licenses. Because our businesses rely on that license in order to renew their liability insurances, their health permits, and they can't do that when they're waiting around 2 or 3 months for something to come in the mail. So how are we going to fix that in the city?
Jackie, I hear you, and I'd like to work more closely with you on that. I also have a business license through the city, and I have not received mine, and I applied for it several months ago, because I'm a consultant. So I hear you, and even the process in terms of accessibility, we want to make sure that we facilitate that, like you said, for our small businesses. So please, I think you might have my contact information with Terry, but let's continue that dialogue. I've been working with our business office, particularly on updating our sidewalk vending, but I think there's an opportunity for broader conversation. And even our hours at City Hall, where you can come in to be able to have those transactions are limited now. So we want to make sure that we address more opportunities to do that. So thank you for bringing that up.
Sure, and then my second question to regards to the city. You mentioned that those larger booths are something that you're enforcing in a different way than the smaller ones. But are you aware that those smaller ones are brought in by one entity? And that makes them a very large corporation, taking advantage of the fact that you're not going to pursue them as harshly as you would one of the individual members who might have a bigger booth.
So the approach is the same. So we give every vendor the ability to comply, right? And so it is when we see them not complying that those conversations shift in terms of how we're documenting information, if it's an investigation because the attorney's office, or if it's an administrative violation. So you're right, we know that there's a larger business operation that is deploying the smaller vendors, some of them, especially the hot dog vendors, again, that are coming from out of the area and being deployed here. Usually over the weekend, but per events that we have. So yes, you're right. It's not that they're being enforced differently, but the municipal code that we can deploy and use for those circumstances varies. It just varies. So it's also a fire code violation for those hot dog vendors in particular. We do want an opportunity, again, for them to voluntarily comply. If that's not the case, the process would be similar to the larger operations.
My name is Danny Way. I'm with the City Attorney's Office. I'm the prosecutor for the office. I enforce the codes, the city codes, and that's part of my job. Barbara's not saying that the focus is on large businesses versus small businesses. That's not what she's saying. What she was talking about were these vendors that completely occupy the sidewalk in an area where there's a lot of vehicular traffic. And for someone to navigate through, for someone just walking on Milpas, they may be compelled to walk onto the street, onto the busy traffic to get to the other side of these vendors, right? So there's a lot of other things going on. There are propane tanks, unprotected, on the ground. There's grease, there's other things.
So it's not the size of the operation, it's how they're operating, which changes our enforcement approach, right? It shifts because the sidewalk vending ordinance at the state law has decriminalized it, which is good for a lot of people. But that process in terms of noticing and violation is very different, right? These folks that are not in our vendor sidewalk vending ordinance and that are operating in a very different style, again, that approach just varies based on how they're operating.
And then I have a question from one of the food facilities that has a mobile food truck. There was a lot of issues, and I wonder if this has been corrected now, with having that mobile food truck and being told that they couldn't park on the street because they needed permits. And so then they had to push their operations into privately owned parking lots. Has that changed now that has that eradicated?
That's a different issue. food trucks are not covered by the sidewalk vending laws. That's why when the health department was talking to you about it, and the definition was read to you, it specifically excludes motorized vehicles. There is talks, I think there's going to be discussions about a new food truck vending ordinance that's going to go before council. And there's going to be a democratic process, there's going to be discussions about it, and then once we have that ordinance, then we can begin the process of dealing with it and enforcing it.
And we'll let you know when that is going to be.
So are you encouraging then our mobile food trucks to go into carts so that they can continue to operate on the street?
No, we're not encouraging one way or the other. Mobile food trucks can still operate as they are. We're just saying you're right, that there hasn't been a way for us to formally address how many hours they can be parked in a public right of way, where they can be, right? And so all of that is still an ongoing conversation, and we have not regulated that through an ordinance yet.
Now, there's county requirements for mobile food trucks, and they're preparing food, and there's other things, there's state laws, so there's a bunch of other stuff out there.
Sure, I'm just wondering how we can go about giving these food trucks the same respect and dignity that some of these hot dog vendors are in corners. So if you're saying that because they have a food truck and they've gone through all of this rigorous process, that now they're limited, maybe then we need to advocate for those people to go back to food truck, to carts.
Right now, they're not limited, Jackie, so please, again, communicate with us. If you feel like mobile food operations are not getting the same respect as sidewalk vendors, tell me that.
Well, if your ordinance if your ordinance specifically says that these trucks have to go through all of these loops and then go into private
Sí,
parking lots.
permíteme.
The ordinance does not say that. The ordinance that doesn't exist does not say that.
Okay, I'm sorry. We have to go to another question.
But I want to make sure that we follow up on that because they are guided by state law, by public health, right? So if you feel like they're not getting the same respect, then you have to
Hola, si yo, hola.
Okay,
Hola, buenas tardes.
Si yo voy a ser tu intérprete.
Sí, bueno, mi nombre es Ezequiel.
My name is Ezequiel.
Yo tengo un negocio, una taquería.
I have a business. I have a taco place.
Es en la calle Estado.
It's on
Y
State
cumple con
Street.
todos los requisitos de la ciudad.
I comply with all the requirements of the city and so on.
No nada más eso, sino que tenemos renta, tenemos fixed cost.
Not only that, we have rent, we have expenses, fixed costs, expenses.
Tenemos empleados, tenemos impuestos,
We have employees, we have taxes,
taxes,
we have sales taxes.
payroll taxes,
Payroll
employees.
Yeah.
Entonces, es injusto que para
It's
una persona que
unfair
tiene
for a person
negocio
that has a business
tenga que lidiar con ese tipo de
have
negocios
to
ambulantes.
put up with all these, ambulatory businesses.
Ya hablamos nosotros con Salubridad, con
We have talked already with the health department,
que se llama Kibori,
Sibori,
y está
and
y
Shannon.
nos pidieron que tomáramos fotos de estos negocios que vienen de los ángeles ambulantes.
They asked us for us to take pictures of these street vendors that come from Los Angeles.
Dejan basura, dejan grasa en el piso, no tienen
Trash,
reglas de
grease
seguridad,
in the
no tienen
street,
permiso de
they have
negocio,
no
no tienen
business,
name,
health
no
rules
tienen
that they
license,
compliant, they don't have no business license,
no se respetan nada.
and they have nothing else, no tienen
No
nada.
se respetan, no están pagando impuestos.
They don't pay taxes, they don't pay, that would be very unfair.
Pero sí es importante notar que no tienen el self-permit, que es el del Estado.
It's an important thing that they do not have a seller's permit, which is a state seller's permit, and the health permit.
Entonces, si no cumplen es muy fácil hablar a la policía y
Pero-
trabajar a la policía, pero alguien nos tiene que representar como negocios para que hablen con
Yeah.
todo por la policía y simplemente los muevan, porque no están cumpliendo con reglas.
It's easy
Esa
to
es mi
go-
pregunta. ¿Pueden hacer eso?
It's easy for us to call the police and try to move them back, but what we want to know is whether you, the city health, can help us so that these people cannot come here or be removed or no work. ¿Correcto? ¿Eso es lo que quería decir?
Sí, es el plan.
That's right.
anything else?
¿Algo más?
No, nada más eso. Bueno, nada más quiero hacer una nota que volví a hablar con Shannon, la de Health Department, y ella nos dijo que sí, que están tratando de hablar con la policía, pero no están realmente enforzando. ¿Qué se puede hacer para que enforcen? Y
Shannon from the health department told us that yes, that it could be that, but how can we get the police to apply the law, to force them to apply the law? Sí, adelante.
Sí, porque si es una food truck y está con los cumplimientos de la ciudad, porque esas food truck tienen el zinc, el tiene component zinc, permisos.
If there is a food truck and they're working with the permit, the C permit that they have in the city, that wouldn't be a problem. Adelante.
Pero no los ambulantes que no nada más
Another
se
street
ven
vendor.
mal,
Not only they don't look good, but they're in the city.
dejan sucio.
They leave everything dirty.
Y la gente puede quedar de salir enferma porque pues se contamina con el hecho de estar en la calle sin protección.
And then people are going to be, affected or affected because they're outside on the street without any protection.
So, mi pregunta es, ya sabiendo mi testimonio, mi caso,
Now, knowing my testimony and knowing my case,
¿qué se puede hacer para poder forzar esto, no? Y que no nos afecte a las personas porque
what can we do to
los-
affect this,
los-
but that it's not going to affect us, the business, and we can keep conducting our business?
Sí, estoy interesado en saber qué
I'm interested in
se va a poder hacer
What
para
are we
poder
able
estar al seguimiento.
to do about that? Gracias.
Gracias.
Ok, ahorita te van a contestar. So anybody can answer?
Yeah, I mean, I will say it is unfair to have certain businesses that are following the law and to have certain businesses that are not following the law. And so it is our job to move forward with these activities, and if we see subsequent violations, that we keep noticing them. So I just want to clarify that it is not the police department's job to enforce the laws around sidewalk vendors, right, or street vendors. They can enforce the law when it comes to our public safety, right? So public right-of-way, those dangerous locations where people are operating. Like I said, it's the fire department's job to make sure if there's open flames that we're addressing that. But just being a vendor in the city is not a criminal activity. You are breaking the law by not having a business license, and we need to make sure that you get that license and you know the guidelines that you're following. But we cannot have the police department essentially ask people to or force people to leave the city just because they're a vendor in the city from outside the area. So it's very clear what the processes are on our part, and I will say we are challenged staffing-wise on the number of vendors we're seeing, the time of day, which is late at night that they're deploying, right? And being able to notice and then have those subsequent violations, right? So our violations right now start at $100 and go up to $500, and then you're charged that by day. That noticing over that period of time for any one vendor, right? And we are seeing multiples across the city. It's tough for us, even as a coordinated team, to be able to address all of that citywide consistently enough to send a message that you need to follow the law here. But we will get there, and we will be able to do that.
Okay, Israel has a question.
My question would be is, do you have anybody going out at that late at night to supervise these people, taking notes and see,
No, está bien.
because I mean,
Necesito tenemos que...
it's gonna be a big problem if we don't control that, it's gonna be like LA, a lot of people gonna start coming, to the city, since there is nobody, taking care of that. There will be a big problem when we try to solve it,
Yes, yeah, so we are trying to get ahead of it. We have an enforcement team that includes right now the fire department, it includes public health that deploys with us. And the police are there for the safety of the team. These are very challenging situations that we're in. And I will be perfectly honest, there's a lot of the public that doesn't want us to do a thing and wants those vendors to exist exactly how they're operating right now. And all I will say is we too want vendors to exist, but we want them to do it in a lawful way. So that is what we're doing. And so we've had multiple enforcement operations in the evening at different times of day over the last several weeks, and we'll continue that as a city team and coordinate with public health and accounting.
Barbara, sorry to interrupt, one question, I'm sorry. Can you go back to the amount of the citations? You said something like $50, $100, and how many times is that gonna happen?
So if it's for a violation of the city sidewalk vending ordinance, then it can only be administrative.
Yes,
It can't be criminal. And the violation is, there has to be a notice of violation first. And after that, it's 100 for the first violation, 200 for the second violation, and 500 for each subsequent violation.
Like how many more subsequent?
It can keep going. So if after the first, say for example, the first day they go out there, they give them a notice of violation, tell them, hey, you're operating outside the ordinance, the law, right? For sidewalk vending in the city. Then the next day they come back, or they don't stop that day, and they issue an administrative citation. That first citation is 100. Then if they come back again the next day, 200. The next day after that, 500. The next day after that, another 500. So it just keeps
And I
stacking.
want to clarify that outdoor restaurants that are operating in open flames, big equipment on the public right of way, that is a criminal investigation. So each enforcement operation, we are documenting, right? We are citing, and we're giving that information to the city's attorney's office, because that is a very different, again, enforcement pathway that we have with that.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. I want to have an idea because, you know, for example, let's say that any place that, any booth is like, already has like 10 citations. You mean that every single time this booth is being charged $500?
It could be. So I don't know what you mean by. Let's say that we have requirements that the vending occur within a certain distance from business, from certain type of businesses. If they don't comply and they continue not to comply, then the city can issue administrative citations. Okay? So they'll keep issuing administrative citations. However, if the violation, as Deborah was talking about, is a fire code violation, that's aside and apart from sidewalk vending. They're committing a different type of violation. So if they're dealing with grease and something that they're cooking and it's grease, it's flammable, and they have propane tanks, and they don't have the required fire extinguisher. They don't have the required protective things for the propane tanks, and that the propane tanks are properly elevated. They don't have some type of venting mechanism to vent the grease and the smoke that's being caused by the cooking. Those are all fire code violations, and each one of those violations are criminal in nature. So that's something aside and apart. But if it's just for they're not complying with the distance, or they're not roaming when they should be roaming, or they're operating outside the time allowed in our ordinance, those type of violations are administrative fines. They're the fines that we talked
And
about.
I will say right now, so our enforcement for the smaller vendors that have been in our community for a while is per the department where the vendings happen. So if it's waterfront, the waterfront staff will go out and say, hey, our guidelines are that you have to be this far away. Can you move over to this location? A lot of the vendors are like, absolutely, we'll move to that location. So I just want to say that that administrative citation, we first try to have voluntary compliance. Like we want you to say, okay, we get it, we didn't know, and we're happy to move, we're happy to adjust. And so that really is our initial engagement. And we've done that a few times, but again, we're seeing a little bit more subsequent violations, continued sustained violations, more vendors in using open flames that, again, we have to, and we are committed to as a city, making sure that we address.
Okay, we have a question. Natalia.
Sí, hay algo que mencionaba acerca de las licencias,
You were mentioning about the licenses,
que podríamos pasar al departamento de la ciudad.
that we could go to the city department.
Se toma mucho tiempo y cuando llegan a una ciudad no existen con eso.
A long time, and when you're right there, they don't help
Cuando
you out.
dura casi 2 meses hasta 3 meses.
Almost 2
Entonces, ella menciona
You mentioned
que le están dando citaciones a las personas que vienen de
citations
otros
to
lados.
people that are compliant.
Entonces, esas personas están haciendo dinero.
These people are making money.
Nosotros no estamos
We're
haciendo
not making
dinero.
money.
So, ¿cuál es la solución que le están
What is the
dando?
solution that you're giving them?
Usted menciona que están trabajando con Health
You're
Department.
working with the health department.
A los negocios, cuando tienen negocio de comida,
When they have
son
food
muy estrictos
they're very strict.
y hay ciertas temperaturas que se tienen que usar para la comida. Se tiene que desechar esa comida. ¿Por qué no enforzan
Why
eso?
don't you
Para que estas
apply that
personas
for these people so that it's going to hurt them.
y lo piensen una vez más antes de hacer ese tipo de acciones. Porque de otra manera, como lo estamos manejando,
Like the way you're
no
handling
va a parar. Entonces nos está afectando a
it's
nosotros,
affecting us.
una vez más, porque duran meses
Because many
para
times,
ganar la licencia. Y yo puedo dar un evento.
I have to go to
En ese evento mínimo son 2,000, 3,000 personas. ¿Ok? Si ustedes no me dan mi licencia,
my license,
perdí ese
I
evento.
lost that.
Y las otras personas sí están ganando dinero. Entonces, no me hace sentido eso.
It doesn't make sense to me.
¿Sí? Porque personalmente fui a la ciudad,
The
les
city,
dije que si me podían asistir, no tomamos pago aquí, tienen ese poder. Entonces, una vez más, no me hace sentido eso. Y tienen que hacer algo al respecto para subir a
Gracias por su... Natalia.
Well, didn't they want to respond to him?
Was it a comment?
Yeah, it was a...
Oh, okay. Okay, Barbara, you said about the team task force, okay. That includes the fire department, health department, who else sits on the task
For
force?
these current enforcement operations, fire is taking the lead because it's a fire code violation, right? So city administrator's office is supporting that. County public health is also noticing their violations on the food handling and food safety part of it, simultaneous to the fire department. And the police department is there for the safety of the team, right? Because these operations are happening in unsafe areas. To be perfectly honest, like, we make sure that our team is okay as we deploy out. There is, as part of that, a much larger task force that we're putting together that includes many more departments. So it's city attorney's office, it's the business office, business licensing, so we want to make sure that, again, it's accessible, that you're getting your business license in a timely manner, that you're not hurt financially in that time lag at all. And that we have other departments like Public Works, Waterfront, the library, Parks and Recreation, like the spending is happening everywhere across the city. So every department needs to be involved in how we move forward with education outreach. The administrative citation process has to be shared across departments for us to be able to address some of the unlawful activity we're seeing. So, and we need to make sure that we're consistent across departments in terms of how we approach this. So that larger task force, we're starting to facilitate that, but our enforcement operations have been prioritized, at least for these bigger vendors that are really dangerous.
Okay, so the larger task force is currently in the making.
Yes, yeah.
So the one that you currently have consists of fire
Just,
department,
and that's the
health
enforcement,
department,
that's the enforcement.
and so that they go out at various times during the day and various days. And is that 7 days a week?
It's not 7 days a week.
So
It's not, we're not working every single night on that enforcement.
how many nights? 5?
Right now, the most, yeah, you give us too much credit, Natalia. No, we've been doing twice, our maximum is twice a week so far, yeah.
So environmental health is working on this, not just with the city of Santa Barbara, which they're thankful for, but we have to work on this county-wide. We're having one of the street vendors without health permits across the county, and we're working with different jurisdictions to work on that. And our first approach is, the administrative fines are the same for us as it is for the city. And our first approach is always educational. We issue an MOP. We do ask them to pack up and leave. And we do try to do follow-up. But we have vendors that come in the morning, we have vendors that come in the afternoon, and we have the evening ones. And I do have as many inspectors as I have possible going out and trying to address these issues.
And we need bilingual, right, representation from all those departments and enforcement operations. As we know, we would love our staffing capacity to be at the level it needs to be, but it's not in that regard. So it's all, if staffing is available, when we deploy out, for how long we do that. My role has been going to different neighborhoods where you have all identified that we have vendors, right, seeing if they're operating, and then we move forward.
Okay, my next question is, has the city thought about increasing these administrative fines?
Raising them?
Increasing the fines, from 100 to 200.
Right.
Have they thought about doing that?
Yeah, so the state law only requires us to give a maximum fine of a certain amount. Those are what Debbie stated. Those are the maximum fines allowed by state law.
So 100, 200, 500 is the max. You get the state dictates that, so you can go higher. Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, on to the next.
Hi everyone, my name is Michael Montenegro. I'm just here because I'm looking out for the vendors. I got a phone call from one of the vendors that personally called me. I don't know how she got my number, but I just care about my community, care about the Hispanic, Latino, and Chicano community, and I think my biggest thing, I definitely hear the tough position where you're at, of balancing the two sides, how it's affecting the business owners, the health code violations, the fires, and the bottom line, the permits that were required. So, I get all that. There's a process due with all that. But my biggest thing when it comes to implementing this enforcement is I just hope the city and the county takes the proper grace and the right amount of resources are invested into this, because when it comes to optics, this type of issue is nothing new. This has happened in Los Angeles and Santa Ana, and things get nasty. And and that's where the grace really comes in from. I'm not sure what that looks like, but I just want to know. I just hope that there's a grace approach with informant, educating these street vendors who are working to provide not to gain profit. So thank you again for hearing me out.
I can tell you both the city and the health department strive to educate people and to gain voluntary compliance. They want a safe, healthy way of people doing business, right? It's important to the community that it's done in a safe and healthy manner. So I can tell you that they're committed to educating and gaining compliance. Their approach isn't just to bring the hammer down.
No, and please know that. So we're getting a lot of heat from people who want the reverse, right? That they need to be out of the city. And we're saying, no, the city is welcoming. We want to support this level of business in our community. How we can do that. So we are leaning into grace. Yeah. And we want to communicate that to the broader public.
Now, that being said, people who have been, there's outreach. They try to get them to voluntarily comply. Ask them to move before. They continue to do it. Then there's if you continue to violate, then the city and the health department has to do something about it. We have an obligation to protect the community.
Yeah, and I see that, and I think I think y'all are doing a good job right now for even organizing this. Because
there will be more meetings.
Thank you for doing that, because there needs to be that cultural sensitivity. I want to give a huge shout out to the Eastside Historical Society, the other folks involved, because it takes a lot of work, but at the same time that grace, that cultural understanding, because you mentioned that other side of folks who are demonize our people, and and I don't want us to go there. I just want there to have that humanity, and let's work together.
And yes, and so please know that my contact information is here, but the pathways are open. So if there's things that we can do to adjust our approach, tailor how we're doing outreach, where we need to meet folks to be able to meet them where they're at. Again, people have a lot of demands on their time, that we'll have more of these community meetings in different places, again, to be as approachable and accessible as possible. So if there's anything that we can do to change, adjust, adapt, there's opportunities that we can come to meetings that you're involved in to just share some information, and we're happy to do that.
Okay, Jose?
Sí, yo tengo preguntas.
Okay, I'm sorry. It was his turn, but you can go ahead.
It was a different Jose.
Jose Arturo Gallegos, and when I was a little kid, my mom and I used to travel a lot to Mexico, and then ship off my cousins, my paternal grandmother in Tecate, And as a kid, I always enjoyed the street vendor food, down there. One of my favorites was the ice cream, old corn on the cob. Oh, God, delicious. And so last time I went down to the cafe to visit my cousins was in January of 2014. And my cousin, he asked me, hey, you want to go to town with me? I'd have to pay bills, the utility bills and stuff like that. Well, yeah, sure. And I go, hey, afterwards, I'd like to get corn on the cob. Because it's just so delicious down there.
Los elotes.
Yeah, elotes, exactly. And he goes, you know what? It's not going to happen. Like, what do you mean? For some strange reason, he never gave me an explanation, but in Tecate, Baja California, Mexico, the officials there, they stopped street vending. No more street. Now, I can't say for sure all of Baja California or all of Mexico, or, I don't know, but in Tecate, they just put a stop to it. No more. No more tacos, no more ice cream, corn, anything else. They just, mariscos, they put a stop to it. Now, I don't know if it was health issues, maybe people getting sick, I don't get it. But he says, that's it, over and done with. So now, now I guess what these street vendors here in Santa Barbara, they started, like last year, I think it was, and I was like, whoa. I would see a couple of them in Ortega Park and so forth, and I'm going like, well, you know what? It was in New York, Chicago, even in Phoenix, I lived there for a while, but downtown Phoenix, you had your hot dog vendors. And of course, they have their permits and everything, they have to go by the book, they have to pay their taxes, and I'm going like, well, they're going to have to do the same thing here. And now, blocking the sidewalks on Milton Street, that's just ridiculous. I just kind of came up with the idea, on State Street, since now it's, over the foot traffic, and I'm sure the restaurant owners down there are not going to be too happy.
Oh, they're all there. The vendors are there.
They're down there too? Really? Now, today, I had an appointment late afternoon at Saxon Clinic on Pueblo Street, and I take the bus, and then on the way back to the station, right there on the corner of Chapala and Carrillo, on Chapala, where the old Greyhound bus station used to be, there was a street food vendor there, and he was selling whatever he was selling. Like, okay. But fine and dandy, if they're documented or undocumented, what have you, but you gotta have your permits. You gotta have everything. You have to have inspectors to make sure everything is, none of this open flame type stuff, because like y'all said, it's pretty dangerous. Anyways.
Thank you so much. Any answers?
I would just like to state that we have gone out, issued NOVs, and have been successful in bringing some people in and are going through the process to get permits. And it's actually been a really good process for both of us. We kind of learned a lot along the way, and things we needed to improve on to help these people get through the permitting process. But yes, we do, it's very important to have your permits and your health permits.
I mean, if the restaurants, if they have to have their permits and everything else, well, same thing with the street fair. Maybe not quite as expensive, but you've got to go through the inspections, make sure everything, I mean, just like any restaurant business, big or small.
Okay, José.
Me están negando el permiso para vender a Montecito. Me llevó el sheriff y me sacó.
I'm trying to
Y me pidieron muchos papeles en la ciudad y ya llevé todo.
Have space between talks. It's like, have
Y me
space.
están negando el permiso.
What was your question, sir?
Please have space between
Are you going to
talks.
do consecutive? Okay.
Yeah, consecutive.
Ajá, sí, me están negando el permiso. Yo llevé toda la documentación que me pidieron.
They have denied the permit. I already took all the documentation that they asked.
Y me traen de un lugar a otro, de una oficina a otra.
They take me from one office to the next one.
Ajá. Y ahora último me dicen que tengo que ver con alguien de la carretera a un lugar donde llego a vender a Montecito.
And then they told me I have to see somebody on the highway in order for me to go to sell in Montecito.
Creo que es un lugar público ahí donde paro.
I think it's a public place where I stop.
Ajá. No le afecta a nadie.
And I
Yo hay unas cartas de unas personas de ahí
los que viven en el Montecito y no hay ningún problema.
I have some letters from the people that live around in Montesino, and there's no problem with them.
So the county has denied a permit for you to sell? Is that what
What
you're
are you
saying?
selling?
The application was denied, the permit was
La
denied.
aplicación fue negada para que usted pueda estar en Montesino.
Ya llevé todo lo que me
I
pidieron.
took all the paper, all the things that they asked me.
Was it
Ahora,
city?
eso
Was the city of la ciudad?
Ah, la ciudad.
County.
The
Ajá.
city.
Con la señora Rosa. Rosa, se llama.
The lady's
What are
name
you
is Rosa.
selling, can I ask?
It's a food truck. They say burritos, tacos, Mexican food.
¿Qué tienes?
It's a
It's
truck.
a truck.
Yes, it's a food truck.
Oh, it's inside a car,
Yes.
with motor vehicle?
Yes.
Yes, it's on the truck.
Okay. Yo tengo todo en regla, tengo todo.
Ajá.
Pago impuestos, pago tax, pago
I
todo.
pay taxes,
También estoy viendo por
I comply with everything. I'm really-
Did you go to City Hall? Did you contact the finance department? Were you trying to get a permit there?
Se puso en contacto con la gente de la licencia de los permisos.
Sí, ya estuve ahí.
Yes, I was already there.
Con la
We
señora
denied
Rosa.
it.
Rosa,
There'd be no reason, there'd be no grounds.
the person that took care of it is Rosa.
Which Sharon?
Did you get the health permit already? Ya tengo.
What he's saying is that he has a mobile food truck and he can't park on the street because of your ordinance. So he wants to know how to figure out how to get past that. It's not an operative issue.
Also, he mentioned that he was approached by the sheriff's department to move him. So,
Sheriff's department. So you're saying.
One at a time.
Explíqueme, señor.
Okay, estoy a un lado de la carretera. De un derrumbe.
Where there was a,
Es un espacio ahí.
where there was a mudslide, there's a space there.
Y no me dejan estar ahí. Creo que hay una persona que no quiere que esté yo
There
ahí.
is a person that doesn't want me to be there.
Okay, are you're, so this, it sounds like it's not even close to Coast Village Road, right?
Oh, no.
Hot Springs and Hot Springs.
Okay,
So the road entrance.
so you're saying the sheriffs came and talked to
The
you, right?
sheriff vino y habló
Ah,
conmigo.
okay, so that's not in the city limits.
Eso no son los límites.
If it wasn't in the city limits, the police department would come to you.
Porque si era
Most of
si era dentro de los límites de la ciudad, hubiera venido el departamento de policía.
Most of Montecito is county,
La mayoría de Montecito es el condado.
not the city. Only a small part of Montecito is in the city.
Hay solamente una parte de Montecito que es parte de la ciudad. Y el
That's
resto es parte
Coast
del
Village
condado.
Road.
Y eso es la parte de Coast Village Road, que es parte de la ciudad. ¿Entendió?
Pero aquí
Okay, anything else, José?
¿Algo más?
No, that's it.
We could take your name and number.
Vamos a pedirle su nombre y su número de
And the
teléfono.
location, and
Su ubicación.
I can check with planning and development to see if there's.
I'm going to check with who?
Planning and development,
Ella va a chequear con el departamento de planeamiento y desarrollo
to see if there's any zoning issues or
a ver
restrictions.
cuál es el problema que existe. Ok.
O a lo mejor para que se ponga en otro lugar. Porque el chiste es vender, donde se pare, pero que
¿Tienes
venda.
una tarjeta?
No importa, pero ahorita le das, aquí puedes anotar tu información.
Uno atrás de esa.
Okay, Dr. Raúl, thank you so much.
I'm gonna follow from the gentleman here from Mexico. He mentioned that in Baja, California, Mexico, or somewhere else, people that are vending, illegally in the streets or not lawfully in the streets, are wiped out and taken to some other place. The reason in Mexico, and I'm explaining that to you out, because you're from Mexico, so most of you, is that the city chooses a place that is for vendors, away from the main places that could compete with the businesses. So the guys are sent there. They are not kicked out. They are sent and moved away. It is a matter of a trick that is used in Mexico. I know that very well. I mean, they have sizes and I have seen that way. So that they have to move to that place. Of course, the fees are going to be very poor, but at least they have to move there and they cannot move to some other places, Just to clarify, they are not just wipe out just there and you are doing the unlawful thing that you are doing, it's easier to get it as a listen. You need to move now. There is a place for you there, you know, from the city, you know.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask, is there any law or code violation in correlation to and restriction of indirect, like, in restriction to indirect use of private property by food vendors? To give you an example on the security guard, so to give you an example on the security guard at a Trader Joe's and PetSmart parking lot, right? So, you know, I've had many instances where the food vendors will park right there on the sidewalk, right next to the store, which, yes, sidewalk is city property, it's not private property, that is not my job to deal with it, but the indirect use of the parking lot that is right there, where, you know, especially on heavy days, where people are parking on the fire lane with their hazards on, like, it's a big issue, you know, for people to just park right there, not go to any of the stores and go straight to the food vendors and back to their cars. Is there any, like, law that could restrict that or code violation?
So,
Or there's nothing in place?
well, Trader Joe's, if they're using Trader Joe property, if they're using Trader Joe's parking lot, they can certainly seek remedies in civil court for it. So, but that's a part and separate from what we're doing. We're dealing with people who are street vending on city sidewalks.
Right, it's impacting your ability, not only your job in terms of safety and security of that area, right? But it's impacting the ability for customers that are actually going to those stores to be able to park.
Exactly.
And so that has been brought to our attention. That is one of the vendors that we've been focusing our enforcement operations on. We encourage you in that particular situation to call the police department. We need to be able to document that that activity is happening. And like Denny says, that Trader Joe's can take a route to be able to, again, be able to enforce the area that they want for their customers to park.
Absolutely, it's more like it's like a property owner in contract with both PetSmart and Trader Joe's. So I can go ahead and just contact the property owner and let them know.
Yeah.
So.
And we're seeing, you know, this, again, the same vendor has moved to the parking lot of Car Stereo guys on this
I saw that.
And they're actually, we've confirmed renting out the parking lot to this vendor to be there. But again, just to highlight the complication of what we're dealing with, that's not zoned for an outdoor restaurant, right? So I appreciate the entrepreneurism everywhere, for sure. But that, and again, that's a different part of the city. Code enforcement for building and safety in terms of how that business is operating and what they're zoned to operate in. So that's another approach that we
I can tell you they're actively, both the health department and code compliance for the city are working together and they're actively investigating that.
I've spoken to them before on the property. Thank you.
Okay, Jackie.
So here's the issue on equity, okay? And let me paint for you a scenario. And the scenario happens to be that there are individuals in this community that are migrants that are being trucked in and made to work. And those are the ones that you're providing enforcement on, or maybe those citations. Let me give you a perfect scenario. When you have an ownership of a company that comes from San Diego, they're not busing these people from their homes where they're taking care of children. They're busing these people from households that are full of 20 to 30, 40 people and children, all stacked in one place and divided up in different counties. And then they're brought into different cities. So while you're talking about creating these sanctions, the individual who's cooking is not the individual that you need to go after, but the larger corporation, which is not only an issue of humanity, it's an issue of providing those individuals a dignity that they have earned, but they violated in so many ways. And to me, I understand that you have a particular issue, say, with Trader Joe's, but that's, say, one family putting up a booth who's trying to figure it out, yet they're receiving more enforcement in the city than those individuals who are busing people in and making them live in horrible conditions.
I don't think that, I can tell you that the task force tries to find out who's sending the people out. So I don't think that accurately states the city's and the health department's enforcement efforts. They're not, they do their best to try to find the root of the problem, and they do their best to try to find the person responsible. So.
And I also want to acknowledge that this is why we're not out 7 days a week in the evenings doing this. This is a very, I would say, personally uncomfortable situation to be in, because you're right, the individuals that are working that evening are not the target. We're trying to, in terms of enforcement, we're trying to educate, understand, we're trying to get a hold of their operator. That's a different voice at every single time we call. It's burner phones, right? So we're working with our elected officials, bringing it to the attention of labor trafficking and the labor enforcement task force, because we know that this is horrible conditions. But we're also, yeah, you're right though, the direct livelihood of those individuals that are part of a larger network and operation, we know the complexity, and we are trying to be as sensitive as we can, knowing that is not the focus, is the people who are actually working. We know it's a bigger network, it's a bigger operation.
I can tell you, they try to find.
This is really.
Yeah, they try to find who's
License
responsible.
plate, photographs of vehicles, the contact information, all of that's being documented. We have, again, engaged, and I'm telling everyone that this is a marathon because of this. We are trying to be sensitive, but also enforce the law and make sure that it's safe for everyone. So it is this, we're all learning and evolving together, and so we, again, have feedback, ways we can communicate, ways we can support families that are part of these operations, individuals that are part of the operations, to enforce better labor practices, the health and safety of the individuals who are working, the operations. We want to do all of those things. We really do.
Any other
Question? Miguel
I
Rodriguez.
have a simple question. When we're talking about enforcement, how many citations you give to the same individual that is violating the laws in order for him to be stopped? Is it one to what point?
Well, so the enforcement's just started, right? They're doing outreach, and I have to say they do their best, because the people that are committing the violations aren't out every single night, and so you can't have it. Barbara has to coordinate multiple agencies, get everyone ready to go, and there have been nights that she's coordinated people believing that they'd be out there and they aren't out there. So they're picking the nights that they can be out there. So they've already enforced two weeks in a row. They pick the nights that they think they're most likely to contact them, or they
And alternating the nights between the weeks, right?
So it's in the beginning process. But they have been successful when they've gone out there. People have packed up and moved away. A couple of cases has been referred to our office for me to review. I can't discuss them right now because they're pending review by our office. But things are happening, and so we're just at the very early stages of enforcement. So it's a really good question. It's just that we don't know yet. They have been
larger
successful.
operators, it's been about a month and a half that they've been out there that we've seen this level of activity.
And in regards to the same thing, are you reaching out to the community to have like volunteers from the community that can help in the task force to go around?
We would love that. We would absolutely love that.
Really?
Yeah. Yes.
Because the community is, I bet the community is willing to get involved with that.
I
Okay.
actually get emails, I get emails every day of community members helping us out. It very much helps with the work.
So I have a couple questions. First and foremost, we're all here to kind of bring issue to what's happening in the city. I stand here as my family or business owners in town. We came here for the same reason, for a better life in this country. We were offered nothing in our country, so we seek a better possibilities for us. I came here, I was part of the community growing up here in Franklin, all the way to junior high and high school.
graduated here. You know, and it's tough. You know, you're kind of put in the position, you guys as a city leaders are putting in a position of who do we go against, who do we go for? You know, so it's hard. The question that you know, like the gentleman here said, how long is it gonna take? How many citations do I have to get as a vendor, sidewalk vendor, for me to deter from vending on the sidewalk? So if I'm gonna, and how long is it gonna take for me to stop doing it? Because I'm affecting food truck owners, I'm affecting restaurants, I'm affecting everybody. You know, I have a family to feed as well, and if I don't make my you know, living wage, then how am I going to support my family? So that with the questions that I have is, how long is it going to take for you guys to take action and to plan on all these things? As for, you know, is it going to take 2 months, 3 months, or what is it going to stop from? What is going to stop me from setting up my own, you know, side vending for me to make a living? You know, I have all the permits, I went through all the hoops, I jumped all the ropes. You know, I did my due diligence to be part of this community. Why was when we started the business, they told you, if you don't do this, they're gonna run you out of town. And that's what they did early on with the food trucks. You know, we had the burger bus, for an example. They were here, you know, years ago. And we heard stories, hey, you know, the city's running us out of town. And why they're not allowing food trucks. So now we're coming to this situation now too with street vendors. You know, how are we going to get these folks to comply? I know you guys have a task force and you guys got to take your time to build everything. But like I said, what is it going to take for me to not set up my own shop with, you know, my neighbor on the street? I don't need the permits anymore. If you guys are saying I can pay $100, I don't need permits anymore. So why am I going to go? I've invested, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars, you know, in my food truck, 2 food trucks, in a restaurant, and into making my patio look nice, with the outdoor dining to make my everything look nice. Now they're trying to charge us square footage for outdoor, you know, patios and this. So now I've invested all this money when I could have saved. I could have invested in a 10 by 10, 10 by 15 pop-up with a little side park. And now I don't have to pay you guys taxes, because, you know, they don't know that our taxes that we pay to the city, they go back to the community. They go back to places like this. You know, the library here, schools and stuff like that. You know, so we as business owners, you know, we want to have camaraderie with street vending. We want to be on the same boat. Well, like I said, what's going to stop me from trying to go through those hoops? You know, right now I have to talk with the health department for another food truck that way. So I've invested, you know, over $100,000 on a food truck. So now I just seeing all these vendors, it's like, man, I just spent all this money when I could have just invested $10,000 in the pop-up, and that's it. And now I don't have to put up with, you know, you guys having to tell me, oh, you know, here's the fine for $100. Here's the fine. If I want to show up the next day, oh, it's $200. Now it's $500. But I'm still making, you know, I'm not paying taxes. Maybe I'm paying my workers, I'm only paying them $10. And the minimum wage is $15, you know, $16, whatever. And we're all doing the same thing. So, now that's, you know, one question.
Now, they have to remit sales taxes too. So
sure.
Just because they're vending from a cart doesn't mean they're exempt from having to pay taxes.
But if they're vending from a pop-up, how do you know?
Exactly. So how do they report? And that's another thing too. They're undermining my business. With the pandemic, everything, food costs have gone up, you know, dramatic, 30%. Everything's so expensive.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm selling my you know, food at $5 a taco, $10, whatever, you know, and these guys are coming in, they're charging you $2 a taco. Who are you going to go for? Me as a Hispanic, as a Latino, we go for cheap. I don't care if I eat. You know, we go for cheap, we don't go for quality. I'd rather, you know, eat 10 tacos for $5 than eat 2 tacos for 10. You know,
you have to go to the doctor.
yeah, exactly. You know, a lot of the differences. We have insurance, we have liability, we go to the city. Now we're just stuck in, you know, in places like
Now, do I have to shut down my business and go, street vend?
No, the city and the county takes this really seriously. That's why the task force was formed. They're actively investigating matters. They're actively enforcing on them. So we agree with you. We want people to comply with the law.
Yeah.
We want them to comply with the.
Because all of you have gone through the processes, you continue to go through these processes. Food handling certifications, all of those things. Like you said, minimum wage for your employees, you have had to make all of these adjustments. So that is what, even the enforcement and the directive from the city administrator, all hands on deck to deal with this, that's where that's coming from. We want to support our local businesses, 100%. But we also have state law that has essentially said you cannot criminalize this, right? So because we don't have the criminal arm, we honestly don't know how many administrative violations it's going to take for someone to comply. We honestly don't know the answer to that.
Okay,
So I'm just being straightforward.
Sure, no, that's fine.
Because the threat is not the same.
Yeah.
When we have fire code violations, that threat is real, right? And we are communicating now with them very forcefully, like, this is going to lead to an arrest if we don't get the information of who your operator is, because that is who really needs to be enforcing and make sure that they're permitted and lawful.
Sure. Now that you guys touched on the private property, the stereo guys here on the corner. Now, is it okay if I'm a property owner and I have a vacant lot? Is it okay for me to rent it out to these street vendors and then decriminalize everything? Is it okay, or are you gonna go after me as a property owner to go, to stop, to deter me from renting out to these people?
Right, so the city has a zoning ordinance. Also, I don't think I know of a city that doesn't have a zoning ordinance. So if you can't use a property in violation of the zoning ordinance. For example, if there's in order for you to have your use permit, you have to have a certain amount of parking. You can't just rent the parking lot out. And secondly, you can't just have someone create, in essence, a restaurant in the parking lot if our zoning ordinance doesn't allow it. So yeah, the city has enforced in the past and continues to enforce on that. So the city goes out, they educate the property owner, they reach out to the person that's doing the illegal vending on the private property, they try to gain voluntary compliance, they give notices of violations, and if they continue, then there's progressive steps that they can take.
Is there fines for the property owners that do rent or lease to these people?
Yeah, for renting it out, they do. They are.
How much would a fine for that be if I rented out my space to somebody? I'm charging $1,000 a month.
So a violation of zoning ordinance can be administrative, it could be civil, it could be criminal.
Okay.
So there's a potential criminal penalty for that. So I have enforced on our zoning ordinance and in criminal court. So if I prosecute a violation of zoning ordinance, it could be a crime with potential, fine, potential jail sentence if it's in criminal court.
Excuse me.
I just wanted to address to the last piece, the complexity of this. So the operations that we're seeing right now of people being dropped off here, right? Whether the bigger vendors or the smaller pocket vendors, it is a ring that is big and massive in nature, right? So our ability to say, oh, we have this sidewalk vending ordinance to combat a criminal operation that is vast in nature, right? So we are also trying to bridge that and say, what are the tools that we have available to us? It's the fire code. That's the strongest tool we have right now besides labor enforcement and labor trafficking, right? That is the strongest tool we have right now. And so we're using that tool for this particular enforcement. For others, it's a different tool depending on where it is. So I just want you to know that we care about local businesses that have done everything right to follow the law, and we want you to be successful. This, in terms of its complexity, the depth, when it's happening, how often it's happening, the number of vendors that are happening, literally our city is like trying to do everything we can to address it. So please know that. I mean,
We want them to comply with law. We want them to follow the city's ordinances. We want them to follow the state laws. We want them to follow the health laws. We want them to be safe. We want them to do everything they're supposed to do.
We got some more before you.
So I can tell you that. That's why we're here. And that's why the city is doing the things that it's doing, and then the health department is doing the things that it's doing, is to accomplish that. We want the same things you want. We want them to follow the law, just as you do.
Okay, Rita.
Yes, so I mean, there are several things I wanted to mention. So first of all, we are residents, and we were out in our front yard. We have, the front yard is close to rental unit. So we were out in the front yard, and I said, what is this smell? I never smelled this before. So they were on the corner of Haley and Milpas, blocking the sidewalk. So my husband, Danny, he called, the police and said that they didn't have a permit. The police officers, they didn't really do anything. So they just told them, okay, well, I guess not. They still stayed there for 3 more hours. They were there every day for 3 days in a row from 6 to 10 p.m. And they didn't have a permit, and they kept coming back. And then all of a sudden they showed up in front of next to Trader Joe's. Were there for like a couple of days, even a week or so. And then I said, oh, they're just moving around, they get away with it. And it really bothered me because like people said they have a permit, they have a sanitation station where they wash their hands. These people, they pack everything out of the van. I didn't see any cooling device, anything. It came out of Tupperware boxes, So, I mean, and the people that come there, they just smell the nice barbecue, whatnot, marinated meat, and they said, we don't have the money, we just go for it. These people are gone next day, and if they have a food poisoning, who can they report to? Because they have no idea where they came from, they come from LA, they should pay taxes to LA and not to Santa Barbara, right? So they get away with that too, because they have if they would have a permit, it would belong to Las Vegas where they have their company registered. So just drive over here for 3 hours, do a quick business, get a long line of people, sell their stuff, and gone with the wind again. And then they show up somewhere else. And I don't think that any sidewalk where people walk should be occupied by a barbecue station with fire on top and, like the awning over it that can catch on fire, pretty like you said, with the fire department. I don't want this in my neighborhood. I want a restaurant where people go in, or if you have like some kind of urban show or festival, that's where the people can be there with their staging. But I don't want it in my neighborhood on a sidewalk. And they're not in Hope Ranch, they're not in San Isidro, they're not in Montecito, so they go to the east side. Because that's where they get away with everything. Like we have the homeless shelters on the east side, we have Marlboro that smells on the east side, everything gets dumped onto the east side. Because the majority of people are tenants, and they're Hispanic, and they have like 4 generations living in one smaller house maybe, to just go to work, come back and crash. Maybe have a barbecue on the weekend or get drunk after they get done with a horrible, awful job, okay? Is it true or am I wrong with that? They work their mother, they come home, they don't have any nerves to complain about somebody being on the sidewalk.
We have received a lot of complaints. So residents are very vocal, business owners are very vocal, so know that. We agree that that type of activity should not be happening. And so we've been talking a lot about our enforcement being prioritized just right now on those operations. But I will say it's not just the east side. So public health can attest. These vendors are statewide. It's Goleta, it's on the 154 corridor, it's on the west side, right? So every community is being impacted, unfortunately. That's how massive this is.
It's important to understand why it's occurring at such a level right now. And there was a law passed that decriminalized street vending. So this is why it is becoming what it is today.
There were state laws passed limiting what cities and counties can do to street vendors. And these restrictions, the results of these laws being passed, we could see a proliferation of street vending throughout the state.
So we had to change our ordinance to be less restrictive. So we were prohibiting it in most areas, and we had to change that to accommodate the state law.
Correct, or else it would be in violation of the state law. That's why we have to have the new
So you
ordinance.
have to kind of like make it not as strict as...
We have to, yeah, well, because our previous law was violate, they didn't conform with the new state law. Yeah.
So this change is just of the last year.
But it's not, I can tell you it's not just Eastside.
Yeah, I just feel like, there's a lot of stuff that happened on the east side that don't happen in other neighborhoods, because of the population, where richer people live, they go into a fancy restaurant, So where the people live that have less money to spend, they target these people. They go to where they know people come quickly out and say, oh God, I get a quick fix because I have a small budget. I have to feed my grandchildren and my children and my mom that's living with us. So they go quicker to these places, maybe the people in San Luque or in Hope Ranch. That's why they don't even go there, because they know they wouldn't have any clients. They go with the people that go for the less expensive food maybe in the neighborhood. And that's why it's ending up being on the east side.
Well, and that's we're stepping into really confrontational situations. Like we've had our team recorded by the public because they do not want us there and they do not want us enforcing it. So again, we are trying to walk this very delicate line of ensuring the health and safety and respecting business owners that have followed the law, but at the same time allowing those opportunities for vendors to do their business here as well.
I mean, I'm sorry for the restaurants, I wanted to say, I'm very sorry for the restaurants and the
We do too. Yeah, we do too.
Okay, thank you so much. Jessie.
Okay. Hi, my name's Jessica, and then so I'm kind of on the same boat with all the food truck owners. My parents own a food truck, and we've been on there in business for 15 years now. And similar to his story, we started and had a bunch of obstacles, to have our food truck. And now seeing like all the street vendors, like I'm not against them having, a family to provide. Like, okay, go for it. But I just think that I agree with everyone else that if you're gonna start a business, like start it right, because that's what we had to go through, and that's what we're paying. Like we're paying a kitchen, we're paying like everything for our food truck, everything so that our food's healthy for our clients. And like you mentioned, they don't get food poisoning. And then when I saw the street tacos, I was like, okay, like when did things change that I wasn't aware of? And if that's the case, well then I will stop paying my kitchen and maybe just start selling tacos like that. We have clients that already know us, they know our food is good, and they'll buy it. So, I just wanted to know what had changed, or if anything had changed, and just be aware of it. Just to know that if it's appropriate, then maybe save ourselves some money and do it as well, if that's the case.
We want them to follow the rules like you did.
Okay.
We want them to comply with the city ordinances and the health code like you do.
And I do have another question. So what's like the rule of the food trucks being on the street? Like before, I know it was like a 2-hour limit. I wasn't sure what was the limit, so I want to know what's the limit of the food trucks being on the streets now.
So there is going
Food truck operations are separate, and those have at this time less guidelines around them. They do.
There's discussions about possibly an ordinance. So we have to see what it turns into and what the city ordinance is going to be for food trucks. I do know that that's something the city is looking at and working on.
And let's work together on that, right? So again, we want to make sure that you feel the respect and support that you need as a local business trying to be successful, especially as we look at how we can, again, put guidelines in place that create the safety and healthy, I would say healthy businesses that we need. Yeah.
Okay. One more thing.
Okay.
One more
Following the law.
One more thing. I do appreciate you guys doing these meetings and informing us, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ok, gracias Jessie por tu comentario de que gracias porque estamos organizando esto. La verdad es que ahora queda en la responsabilidad de todos ustedes que cuando les mandemos la invitación le digan a 2, 3, 4 más personas, y a lo mejor no nada más para este tema. Hay muchos temas de nuestra comunidad que necesitan ser hablados, que necesitan ser platicados, que necesitan ser discutidos, de tal manera que no es nada más el trabajo de Sebastián, de nosotros, los de la asociación, del grupo, es de toda la comunidad. Cuando nosotros participamos, nosotros hacemos la diferencia, nosotros hacemos el cambio, es nuestro vecindario, es nuestra responsabilidad. No vamos a permitir que otra persona de otro vecindario venga a tomar decisiones en nosotros. Aquí vivimos, aquí trabajamos, tú en esta primaria te educaste, Adrián en esta primaria se educó, Jessica en la de McKinley. Somos gente de este vecindario, es nuestra responsabilidad. Aquí están las madres de familia que tuvieron a sus hijos aquí en la Franklin, les estaban chiquititos. Entonces es responsabilidad de todos, pero gracias por haber reconocido el trabajo. Ok, antes de que se me olvide, a ver, señorita Lucrecia, tiene un comentario.
Sí,
Después
un
Adrián.
comentario, yo no tengo negocio, pero sí he tenido la experiencia, la mala experiencia de esas personas que también necesitan trabajar, lo entiendo.
I had a bad experience, and I know that those people, they need to work, but
Pero ¿qué con la higiene
how about the
de las
hygiene?
personas vendedoras? No
The
traen
street vendors,
jabón,
they
no
don't
se
have
lavan.
soap, they don't have, you know,
Que
anything for
inclusive
washing.
la comida,
They
agarran dinero.
serve the food, they grab the money.
Yo he sufrido más de 2 infecciones.
I had 2 food poisoning
Sin
situations.
embargo, si yo fuese a un
But
restaurante,
I go to a restaurant,
que ellos se esmeran en tener uno todo limpio.
they could afford to have everything very clean.
Yo me enfermo y ellos tienen la
They will have
responsabilidad.
the responsibility
Me voy a quejar.
because I will complain to the boss, to the
En el otro caso,
manager. In
yo
the other
me
case,
enfermo
I get sick
porque comí con
from
una
what
persona.
I ate at a person, street vendor.
¿Quién me va a responder por mi infección?
My food poisoning for having,
¿Dónde estás?
where's that?
So you do contact the health department,
Usted puede ponerse en contacto con el Departamento de Salud.
and they are required to have a health permit, and
They are required to have a what?
a health permit.
Ellos tienen requerido de tener un permiso de salud.
If they do not have one, we will go out, issue them a notice of violation.
Si ellos no tienen un permiso de salubridad, les damos una especie de advertencia y un citatorio.
And any food vendor that does have a health permit with it and does have food that they're handling is required to have hand washing.
O sea que todo vendedor callejero que tiene un permiso de salud tiene que tener todos los reglamentos higiénicos, porque si no son responsables.
And you want to report it because
Usted
you
quiere
don't want other people to get sick as well.
que otra gente se enferme.
Perfecto.
Ok, perfecto.
Exacto. Yo estoy mal con mi pregunta. ¿Y que dónde lo voy a volver a contactar a esa persona? ¿O qué voy a saber cómo se llama? ¿Cómo se llama
How
el
can I get in
negocio?
touch with that
Los
person?
negocios de ellos yo sé dónde
If I
comer.
go to a business, I know where I am, but these other people,
Y está bien inoquente que yo no sé dónde
there are people that are
preparar
coming from, I
las
don't know from where, I don't know who sent them.
cosas. Yo no sé dónde prepararlos.
I don't even know where they prepare the food.
Ni siquiera sus manos, algunos tienen guantes.
There are some that don't even have gloves on.
Se está como en un restaurante de ellos.
But if I go to one of their restaurants,
Es
it's okay.
mi preocupación
That's
para
my
mí
concern for
y
me.
para mi ciudad.
And for my city.
And this is why,
Thank you for listening to me.
this is why they're required to have a health permit.
Tienen que tener un permiso.
Ok, gracias, perdón. Usted y usted ya hicieron un comentario, vamos a darle chance a este muchacho que no ha hecho un comentario y después regresamos con ustedes.
Buenas tardes a todos. Una pregunta para José. I have a question for more of an observation. I'm just sidelining it. But one of the things I'm noticing, this is just again my observation, is what I'm hearing is from the outside, it's sort of a misunderstanding as well of the demand and the need, and also the back answer saying this is a state change of law. But a lot of our vendors are asking for the permits so that they can get out there and sell. And it seems like they're having issues with food truck permits, location permits. This gentleman here, I work where he does it, so when he gets kicked out, another truck comes in. So it's not really an issue of this, it's more of Santa losing its grip, just like, for example, I grew up here, I lost the grip on rent control, my rent was affordable, now I have to hustle. I believe you guys are the ears of our voice, so it is a responsibility to these people, I believe, just that we don't ask for the state laws to change, we ask for the community to support. And for example, one thing that I'm just noticing is that it's going to be easier for us to do this at home and skip the permits, just enjoying the rest of the group, than to wait for those permits to happen. So we're going to lose again the community's grip on the local vendors. These families here that grew up here, they're going to have to find a different resource of income because we have now sort of not turned our back but not fought enough for the need. And I think this meeting was mainly brought together to say, hey, we're in help, we're drowning here, It's not about the food vendors selling the food, it's about us getting our permits, us getting somebody through here. This gentleman, just from my observation, has gone to 6 offices, and he keeps getting the roundabout. So now he goes home to his children, his wife, and he has to explain, I went to the city, I didn't get an answer. We'll do it again tomorrow. The gentleman in the back as well. I noticed that there's businesses renting their locations, not this month, but for months, for years. And we see that daily. We don't see any, at least I don't see any crackdowns. So I think what we're asking is for us to help the community, to say we have a job now, we have to put on our hero caps and really fight before we're out like gentrification. You know, the rent's too high, functionals being sold to LA companies. Now you have, I was telling one of our staff here, I work in medical field, and when we had the disaster, the mud flow, we didn't have any staff, any nursing staff, any doctors, because everybody lived in Ventura and they couldn't get here. So we have seniors that are vulnerable because of these rent control things that never went into action, people want to move out. So again, we are in a time-sensitive situation. I think that we got to fight for the right for them to have an office, a representative, a phone line that works, an answer that works. So I think just from our observation today is that we want to be heard. We don't want an argument. We don't want to go challenge. We just want to have a foundation so that we can grow and our children can prosper. I mean, that's just my observation from the side. I think you guys are
right. No,
heroes here for us.
Right. And a lot of what you say makes it's totally important to us. But what he was talking about,
and just in general,
I just want to, because it's important. It's not that it's not important to us, but he was in the city, so it's not. We lack jurisdiction to do something when the person's not inside. I understand. I understand he got the run around, and I feel bad for him.
That's what it is.
But there's nothing the city can do in an area that's not in the city.
No, I don't think the location was the issue. It was that he doesn't have a place to go and ask.
Well, and let
the
me
city doesn't support.
do the work for you. I don't want you going to all these.
Yeah, but see, this is
Let
just
me
one thing that
do the
came up
work
today.
for you to find out what's going on. So public health, county, and I, we will work together to address your situation. That's our job. You're right. We have to make sure that you're not losing money by standing in our offices and getting the runaround. We need to fix that, and that is our commitment, to make that easier for you. Your permits need to be issued easier. We just transitioned to a third party. I hear from Jackie, it's not responsive enough, it's not quick enough, and it's not accessible. So these are things that we need to take back to change about our city processes. So we hear you, and I don't want you to spend any more time away from what you need to do. So let's address this on our end. But you're right. There's 2 jurisdictions at play. Montecito is county, right? Not the city of Santa Barbara. There's one part of Montecito, Coast Village Road area, that's city territory. Everything else is county, so it gets complicated. So let's work together to address that. We want you to keep operating. I personally love your food. So we want to make sure that happens, okay? So let's put that on us. And you're right. There are things that have reached a level of complexity and a level of crisis in our community. And this is why we don't have a full team that's 100% dedicated to this, because we're dealing with a housing crisis, we're dealing with a homelessness crisis, we're dealing with a climate crisis, right? And we need to make sure that we do whatever we can across the board.
But I don't want the message to be that the message here isn't that we're drowning and can't do it. They're actively doing it.
We do.
For 2 consecutive weeks, they've gone multiple days to do outreach on Milpas, on the west side, to address these issues. The message shouldn't be we're drowning. That's not the message. That's not the message. That's not the message that's being sent. The message that's being sent is things are being done. The task.
And you're important.
Yeah,
your
for sure.
businesses are important to our community and our city. So I want you to hear that directly from the city administrator's office. Our city council is here. You are important to us. And I would say, yes, I can't prioritize a local vendor over an LA vendor, but I can in terms of how resourceful we can be to make sure that your concerns are addressed, right? So please hear that. You are important, and you following the law has been appreciated. Your community loves what you do, the food that you produce and put out, and you hear that in all these forums. People online are defending the work that you're doing because you're doing it well and you're doing it right. So please hear that. Okay, Jackie.
So, I understand what you're saying as a city, and I respectfully want to challenge that. Because in this city, in the city that I belong to, in Santa Barbara, we create policies that change the entire nation. And so if we start to modify the ordinance so that our health permitted mobile food trucks are able to do their business as equitable as all of these other organizations that don't have that rigor, then this changes the fabric of all of those cities that are around our area. So I understand that what you're saying is that you're responsible for the city, but I can see it differently, because in the city we create policies and we create laws that change the nation. So I ask you to think about it in that way, and more so, or respond, is that I ask you to prioritize modifying that ability to be able to run their business in the different sidewalks, because that ordinance is now detrimental because of this change. So where you have people that don't have health permits, or maybe have a smaller scale, small push cart that are able to sidewalk vendors, our businesses who have gone through rigors and have to continue to go through rigors because that's not going to change, are not able to run their business on the sidewalk. So I'm asking the department to prioritize modifying that ordinance to better suit the need now that you have these two different competitive ways of providing the same type of business, one hindering the other. And that's really what they're talking about. And yes, you may not have the ability to change Montecito because it's in a county area, but remember that in this city, we change the nation. And we can present that with all of our other elected officials that come to those in different areas of the county.
I agree. I think Santa Barbara is a leader in a lot of different ways. When I was talking about Montecito, is that we can't enforce our laws in an area that's not the city. The city limit is where our laws end. So if it's a city ordinance or it's a city permit, once you exit the city, as much as we don't like what you went through, we don't like all the different places that you have to go to. We just, all I'm saying is, we don't have the power. We can't enforce our laws past the city limits. But what we do here, I agree with you, makes a big difference. What council did with the just cause eviction ordinance prompted the county to amend their just cause eviction ordinance. So yeah, you're absolutely right. But in regards to what I was saying, it's not that we don't make changes. We do. We make a difference. I think we are one of the most influential cities in the county, and we're a big city. Everyone's heard of Santa Barbara. It's an internationally known city. You're absolutely right. But in regards to giving him or allowing him to be at a location, to run his food truck that's outside the city limits, that's nothing that it's.
But we can make a call.
Right.
We can make a call to figure out what's going on. So,
right.
And Ms. Adai, what I hear from you is any future regulation on these mobile operations need to be done in coordination and collaboration with the business operators.
Exactly.
We are committed to doing that, so please know that.
Okay, time is running. I'm sorry, yes.
Danny did have one.
Time is running, so we're gonna try to do it as fast as we can. We all are tired, of course, at the end of the day, but let's hear it from.
Yes, I live in the Eastside. I know it's comparable, same thing is happening on the west side. And I thought all the vendors that have businesses that follow the rules, but I think what they're looking for is action from you.
Yes,
Not them, you. They follow the rules, they did everything they needed to do to have the successful business that they do have, because they have family support too. They want you, the health department, to do something. They want you to form laws for our community to protect our residents.
We are.
And we haven't seen it happen from you.
So we have begun enforcement activities. We have started that.
I called the police twice.
It's not the police department.
I understand that, but they were cited twice by the fire department and the police department. And they still came.
Yep, and they're
I
continuing
stood
to operate, and
there
we're
for
not
2
going to
hours
that.
until the police came to make sure they didn't set it up in our neighborhood.
And you are correct. We are going to continue enforcement because they are not letting us.
Policeman said, all we can do is tell them,
Don't do it.
don't do it. That's all. So, as a community as a whole, we're asking you
No,
to do something.
I don't want you to come out of this thinking that we're asking, we're not saying we expect you to do something.
I'm just asking you to keep following the law. that you have.
We don't get it. The city is taking action, so that's it. Part of this is to explain what the city and the health department have done. So I don't know if you were here earlier, for 2 consecutive weeks now.
And going on to the third.
Going on to the third.
Now we're going to
The
the fifth.
fifth, the task force has gone out to gain compliance. So you're absolutely right. It's something the city needs to do, and it's something the city is doing.
I just want to say that we have initiated a criminal investigation for those particular operators. But that investigation takes time. Everything from the license plate on the vehicles that we're capturing, right? So it is a very complex network that's operating these particular vendors. So I know that you feel like we're not doing anything. We are very much doing everything we can.
If you cite one person that's illegal, they will get around fast. And also people that are coming from Los Angeles, that's all they're doing. They come here, set up for 3 hours, and they're out of here. And if you cite one, word of mouth goes faster than what you guys are doing right now.
No,
To do things for the community the legal way.
So last week they cited someone, so here's the thing.
So the cost
We
of
hear
the ticket.
the fire department issued a ticket. So let me tell you something. I want you to know, you're right. This is something that we hear the community. That's why we're here today. Things are moving, but they started a couple of weeks ago. So it's our understanding the city heard what you had to say, and the city are sending people out there. And in these task force, it's not just the fire department, it's the health department, it's the police department that's helping to keep the peace, it's the city administrator's office. So there's all these different agencies that are
But
going
even
out.
to be on site, so I live on the east side, right? So initially, when these vendors were deployed, I was there, and to see it, the operations, we had multiple meetings with the city attorney's office and our city leadership to determine what tool was going to be the toughest. To be perfectly honest, right? Because the sidewalk vending ordinance is not that. And we had to say, of the operations, what we're seeing, observing, the scale, right, how they're replicating, all of that feeds into what resources we deploy on that. So it does take time to make the decision and to make sure that we're following due process. Everyone has rights, right? So we have to do that, and it's not the police department, this is not the lead. The city administrator's office is leading the effort that's combining city and county together, and you're right, they are defiant. They are defiant, and they're popping right back up. So that's why I'm saying, we're not gonna let up. We're not letting up.
We can call the health department at 9:30 when they show up somewhere. I mean, everybody's home.
So we, because of all of you, are getting photos, timestamps, when they have changed from, they started setting up at 5:30, now they're setting up at 7:30, right? So the times of day, the places, because you have been our eyes in the community, our enforcement team is actually more effective. Right? So we actually knew the night that they weren't up on the east side, we went to the west side and they were up on the west side. So we were able to enforce there. So please know it's your eyes and ears that are giving us the ability to be more effective.
But we're still going to do
If you would really scare them, they wouldn't come back. You know, I'm originally from Germany, so in Germany, if I call the police that my neighbor keeps me up all night, they take the stereo with them if he's not turning off the music, okay? So telling them doesn't do anything, you know? I think the police should stay there, we wait here until you wrap everything up and you have it back in your car and you're all good.
They did do that.
So public health has them take down all of their operations. So this is again part of the complexity. We have to wait for them to be fully operational with the open flames. We have to wait for that. Then we come in to enforce, and then we have to wait for them to take it down. Right? So each one of those activities consumes a lot of time.
Because you're limited. But the people that have the vendors that have the permits, they can't wait 2 or 3 months.
I hear you.
You know, they got family support, and they get everything legal.
Right, so,
We fully recognize that, and I wish I could move 7 days a week, faster, full team. I wish I could do that. That's not the resources we have to bear.
but even with that, even the resources aside, they're entitled to due process of law.
Yes.
And so, one of the things that, this is a big memory for me. Many years ago, I prosecuted a petty theft case. This was back in around 2009, at the height of the Great Recession. The city I was in, we probably had hundreds of theft cases each month. So just because someone sets a case for trial, doesn't mean we can dismiss that theft case. People were scared of losing their job, and they got pulled in to a petty theft case, and they were concerned. And what I had to tell them was, you're not here just for the petty theft case. You're here because I think we have one of the best systems in the world. But with that system that we have, people have to give certain things up. There's a presumption of innocence. They're entitled to due process of law. They're entitled to challenge it. They're entitled to challenge what the government has done, and they're entitled to examine it. So, it's a lot to give up, I understand. But that due process of law is so important. It's a constitutional right that has to be safeguarded. And we, as government, as employees of the government, have a duty to ensure that we don't violate people's constitutional rights. So I understand that 3 months is a long time.
These individuals, Denny, that are working, just like Ms. Inda said, are not the folks that should be arrested.
Yes.
Right? So again, we want to take the appropriate time to not harm people that are just trying to make a living. Right?
Exactly.
Or honestly, some of this is so criminal that they're paying a debt back. Right? So I just want to be clear that we are taking more time because these are people's livelihoods, right? This is civil rights.
And why do they come here? Why can't they stay in LA?
Okay, I'm sorry. It is this balance, and so I know you don't have 2 to 3 months of losing business for us to do this, but it is a very...
Yes, I'm sorry, we have to continue. Thank you so much for your questions, are magnificent. And
I'm not happy, you guys part of our code enforcement.
Yes. You know what? Lo que pasa es que hace un momento una persona que salió me dijo, ay, debes de cortar, pero es que todo lo que estamos hablando es tan interesante, no podemos cortar. Y perdón que me tarde tanto en darle la palabra, pero es que todos los comentarios son súper valiosos e interesantes. Go ahead.
Ok, ahora mencionan que van a tomar tiempo en forzar todo esto, lo que viene siendo...
Now you mentioned that you're going to take time to finish what you're doing about this.
Cuando ponen la plancha, hay una flama que es la del pastor.
When they put the...
Entonces, están esperando hasta que explote la gasolinera.
They're going to wait until the gasoline station explodes.
Es algo muy serio.
This is something serious.
Entonces, estamos hablando de una plancha que está literalmente a 12 pies de una gasolinera, donde estamos entonces, toda esa culpa va a caer sobre ustedes.
So, will the responsibility of you could be that?
Y entonces, ¿hasta cuándo van a
Until when
hacer
are you going to stop that investment?
Esta está poniendo justo donde está la estación de policía, en la Turnpike.
And Turnpike, right where the police station is.
Donde estaba antes el eco, enfrente de esa gasolinera. Está literalmente a 10 pies.
Entonces dicen,
ok, pongamos que ustedes quieren esperar un mes, 2 meses.
Let's say they wait a month or 2.
Eso no puede esperar.
That cannot wait.
Turnpike?
That's a incorporated area of the county. And
Esa parte es una parte incorporada del
we were
condado.
just recently made aware of that, and we are in the process.
Recién nos hemos enterado de eso en el condado y ya estamos moviéndonos para hacerlo.
Tiene 2 meses eso.
So please, well, we didn't know about it.
No sabíamos.
Please call us and let us know.
Pero ya
We
me
find out.
Aquí tenemos los videos.
We will give you our card, the call.
He says that he already presented complaints about it.
You just became aware of that.
Ok, aquí está lo más importante. Nosotros somos los ojos, los oídos, los testigos de lo que está pasando en nuestra comunidad. Jesse, que oh my God, parece el soldado de la comunidad, anda detrás de cada puesto, tomando foto, tomando video. Realmente, si todos no tomamos responsabilidad, va a ser muy difícil. Ellos tienen un trabajo de 9 de la mañana a 5 de la tarde, entonces nosotros tenemos que hacer nuestro jale. Usted, por favor, si ya tiene los videos, mándelos, hable con quien tenga que hablar. Ahora ya tiene contacto, hágalo. Continúa.
Terry, does Councilmember Gutierrez want to share anything?
Oh, okay, Oscar. Oscar also también ha sido parte crucial de esta situación, porque junto con Jesse y junto con Miguel Alta, que estaba aquí, han ido personalmente a diferentes puestos a hablar con los que están infringiendo la ley y ha tenido unos resultados a veces no muy favorables, pero él ha ido a darles información de cómo pueden ellos obtener un permiso, cómo pueden ellos trabajar de una manera correcta y que beneficie a nuestra comunidad.
Sí, exactamente. Yo los quiero ayudar y los ofrecí a llenar los papeles para ganar el permiso, pero desde este día nadie me ha llamado o mandarme un mensaje. Estoy enojado con ellos porque los quiero ayudar, pero no están. Did you miss the part where I said I talked to them?
No.
Sorry. Alright, got it, yeah. And so, just, you know, like, he said, he's our eyes and ears on the street. So, if you all want to follow his lead, go ahead. And we're here to help. And we're trying to work with the DA, we're trying to work with the county to figure out what we can do within our legal power to
Okay, una conversación al tiempo, Teresita. Okay, let's try to have one conversation at a time. Aquí la cuestión más importante es que desgraciadamente tú sabes que a quien tú le vas a ofrecer que ayudarle a llenar el permiso no es la persona a cargo, es solamente uno de todo el montón de trabajadores que van dejando de un puesto a otro. Esto es una organización que no sabemos o no queremos vocalizarlo, que es más grande y más complicada de lo que parece. Yo luego estaba platicando con una gran amiga y me dijo, todos tenemos derecho de ganarnos la vida. Todos tenemos derecho de ganarnos la vida. Todos empezamos de una manera, limpiando casas, haciendo lo que se necesita para poder llevar la comida a la mesa. Pero cuando una organización está detrás de esto, ahí es el problema. Por eso Oscar Gutiérrez va y les ofrece la ayuda, ellos no lo van a llenar, ellos no son los dueños del negocio. Hay alguien que está detrás de un negocio masivo donde están yendo a dejar de lugar en lugar. Right?
Sí, exactamente. Y aquí tengo mi tarjeta, si quieren hablar conmigo, por favor, háganlo antes que se vayan.
Gracias. La señorita tiene un comentario.
Sí, o sea, me confundió ahorita, porque quieren ayudar a los ambulantes, a los vendedores ambulantes, o quieren ayudar a los pequeños negocios locales.
Aquí se trata de ayudar a todos, porque la cosa está, mire, esto es mucho más complicado de lo que parece. Como decía la señorita, vayan y enforcen la ley un día y todo va a cambiar. No funciona así, porque estas personas que están a cargo de ese puestecito o puestezote no son los dueños del negocio.
Sí, pero yo creo que la mayoría de todos ustedes ya saben que son vendedores ambulantes, vienen de afuera y ellos saben qué horarios trabaja la ciudad, qué horarios trabaja.
Por eso se han cambiado los horarios.
Ellos vienen ya después de que ustedes ya no están trabajando.
No, perdón, por eso las autoridades han cambiado los horarios. Por eso ahora, por ejemplo, hacen una junta y dicen tú no vas a trabajar de 8 de la mañana a 4 de la tarde o de 9 de la mañana a 5 de la tarde, pero va a cambiar tu horario y van a trabajar en la noche y por eso han estado forzando de quitarlos. Es mucho más complicado de lo que parece y lo más complicado es que hay cosas que no se pueden probar hasta que se van a probar, porque el District Attorney's Office ya está envuelto en esto. Entonces va a haber unas investigaciones mucho más complejas que esa. ¿Sí me explico? Ok, Bárbara, we're about to close.
We're trying to change as they So that's a part of the complexity of our team, is that we're trying to change the time, the day.
Es lo que les estaba explicando.
Yes.
Todos sabemos el terreno que estamos pisando, pero tenemos que hacerlo conforme a la ley y al mismo tiempo muchos de los vendedores van a ser ayudados, porque muchos sabemos que no son los dueños y hay algo atrás. ¿Sí me explico? Que no queremos hablar. Entonces, antes que todo, muchísimas gracias. ¿Alguien tiene alguna pregunta, comentarios, sugerencia, opinión? Yes.
Just have one last comment. I think we need to act together.
Yes.
We need to act fast, because if we don't, we're going to see flea markets on the side.
Yes.
You know, we're going to have not only taco vendors, not only street vendors, we're going to have people say, hey, if they're doing it, why can't I? Sell cupcakes, sell, shirts, clothing, shoes, whatever. So we're going to obstruct, the right of way. Another thing too, we're not thinking about the ADA compliance.
Oh, we are.
That's a big issue. With the ADA, in our businesses, we gotta comply. If you have a brick and mortar, you have to have a ramp for people to go. You have to have a restroom that's accessible. So there's a lot of things like that, so we just gotta act a little bit quicker before it gets out of our control. And you have, flea markets all over town. And now the real flea markets at the high school, at the showgrounds get affected by all these. Now it's not just the restaurant owners, now it's the whole city in general that's getting affected by these, street vendors. And we're all kind of stuck in the same, the same cycle. Now that you're gonna get the business owners from clothing stores, from cupcake stores that are coming to you and saying, hey, what's going on? You didn't nip it in the bud while you could with the food, now look at us, we're stuck with it. And now there's going to be illegal alcohol sales, because, there's going to be alcohol. And you don't know that. So there's going to be a lot of things, so we got to act fast, and, faster than we are now, to get that taken care of for everybody and for our kids.
Okay, para tu comentario, how can we help you?
So up to this point, you have been, like I said, so helpful with the complaints, letting us know photos, video, where they are, the locations, the time they start setting up, right? So we're able to deploy much more effectively. And what we heard today about our permitting processes, our business processes, we are going to take that back to look where we can make sure that you're not being hurt by our processes. That is our goal. So we can look at and try to rectify some of those situations. If there are some dynamics of county, city, I've been going to 6 different offices. Please use the contact information. We have bilingual staff. We're able to communicate so that we can help and put the work on our end, not on your end. And I do want to say it's not just that it's impacting your businesses and your livelihoods. That is the most important. But we are also looking at the fire that could happen. Like I said, the person who steps out of the street that could get hit, right? So there are so many things at play right now, which is why the city is prioritizing this. And this team is part of the enforcement team that's out there. So we're here with you tonight. This is important for us to communicate back and forth, just as it is important for us to be out tomorrow night and the next night enforcing, right? So I know that it's taken time and it's going to take too much time for your day-to-day, but we are doing everything we can to move as quickly as the city can to respond to this.
It has been very difficult for us to try to figure out how are we going to be successful at this, and that's been our most difficult thing. It is our goal. We are going to be successful with this. And I have to say, working county-wide, we work with a lot of jurisdictions, and the city of Santa Barbara has really taken a lead on this. They're doing an incredible job, and I'm trying to use them as a model for other jurisdictions to do the same. So we're very lucky to teaming with them. Our team approach, I think, is probably very successful, and we're very happy to be teaming up with them. And so, like I said, they're doing an incredible job. It's been very difficult for jurisdictions to try to figure out what can we do and how we can be successful.
And I'll say 2 more things as we move forward.
Yes.
Working with a volunteer group to help with education and outreach. Would love more support in being able to do that. Again, meeting folks where they're at. If there's meetings that we can attend to share this information, we want to be there, we want to hear about that. The other piece of this for us is to really spread the word for folks to reach out to us. right? So I really don't want people to sit with questions or fear, right, or misunderstanding. We want to be able to address those. So please reach out to the city. There are people on the other end. There are us and our whole teams, and we want to do right by you, our local business owners, as well as our local residents. So thank you so much for your time today. I know, again, this is a really, really difficult, complex issue. It's impacting all of us. And so I hope you leave with we're doing the best we can, and we will continue to do better.
Thank you. Antes de que terminemos, pues estamos a punto de cerrar la junta, pero tenemos la información de todos ustedes. Gracias por aguantar esta junta tan larga y tan compleja. Pero aquí tenemos su información. Les vamos a estar mandando ya sea textos, emails. Por favor, si cada uno de nosotros le dice a 2 personas, esto se multiplica y más personas pueden ser beneficiadas. Contamos en ustedes, por favor.
Nomás un minuto más. So in closing, any last encouraging words from each department?
I just want to let you all know that we hear you. Action is being taken. Steps they've been out 2 consecutive weeks already. They will continue to go out. They've been working collaboratively with the county. We understand your concerns. We equally share in those concerns. And things are being done. I just want you to know that this meeting wasn't us telling you we can't do anything. It's actually the opposite. We want you to know that we are doing something. Things are being done by both the city and county. Things are being done.
And to spend 2+ hours with us in community, to share your concerns and tell us your experiences and what you're dealing with and what your struggles are, this is how we become a better community.
¿Les damos un aplauso? Thank you. Miguel. Lorena.